The bustling Galactic Council station above verudex buzzed with the usual frenetic activity. Species from numerous star systems mingled, traded, and negotiated, their voices creating a symphony of the galaxy's diversity. Among the throng, a human delegation moved purposefully toward the council chambers, a young boy trailing slightly behind, his eyes wide with wonder. Commander Jack Sullivan watched over the delegation from a distance, his seasoned gaze missing nothing. A career military man, Sullivan's presence at a predominantly diplomatic outpost might have seemed out of place, but tensions had been rising, and his experience in conflict zones was invaluable. Suddenly, the calm shattered. A series of loud blasts echoed through the station's corridors. In the chaos, the young boy, separated from the delegation, wandered into a restricted area, a tragic misstep. Sullivan, hearing the commotion, turned sharply. His communicator buzzed. "Sullivan here, report. It's a raid, smugglers retaliating against security measures," his lieutenant, Alex Ramirez, replied breathlessly from another sector. "But there's a problem. A civilian got caught up near the docks." A cold dread settled over Sullivan. "A civilian? Not the—" Before he could finish, his fears were confirmed. "It's the child, sir. He's down." Without hesitation, Sullivan charged through the crowded corridors, barking orders into his communicator. "I need a med team to the docks now. Clear the path." As he approached, the sight that greeted him stopped him cold. The boy lay motionless, a council guard standing over him, panic etched across his face. Sullivan's heart sank. The child's innocent exploration had led him directly into the line of fire. He knelt beside the boy, his trained hands checking for signs of life, but it was too late. The damage was irrevocable. Around him a crowd had gathered, aliens and humans alike, their faces a mixture of shock and confusion. The guard, a young draconian, stammered an explanation, his scales shimmering with distress. "Commander, I didn't see him. I was aiming for the smugglers. He just appeared." Sullivan stood, his face a mask of controlled fury. "This area should have been secured. Who was responsible for civilian safety?" The draconian's eyes flickered with fear. "We were understaffed, sir. I'm so sorry." As Sullivan coordinated with the arriving med team, his communicator buzzed again. This time it was Admiral Hawkins, a high-ranking officer back on Earth. "Jack, I've seen the reports. What's the situation?" "It's as bad as it could be, sir," Sullivan replied, his voice steady despite the turmoil. "The child is dead. This incident, it won't go unnoticed or unchallenged." Hawkins's voice was grave. "Understood. Get back to Earth, Jack. We need to discuss our response. This could escalate quickly." Nodding to Ramirez, who had just arrived, Sullivan gave rapid orders. "Lieutenant, oversee the situation here. I need to return to Earth immediately." Ramirez nodded, his expression somber. "Yes, sir. I'll handle things here." As Sullivan made his way back to his ship, his mind raced with the implications of the tragedy. Earth's relations with the Galactic Council were already strained, and this incident could be the spark that ignited a wildfire. Whatever was coming, Sullivan knew Earth would need to respond decisively. He just hoped they were ready for the consequences. With a heavy heart, he boarded his ship, the gravity of his mission settling upon him like a shroud. The journey back to Earth would be a short one, but it would give him just enough time to prepare for what he suspected would be a historic briefing. Commander Jack Sullivan's shuttle docked at Earth's central military space station with an urgency that matched the grim mood enveloping the globe. The news of the child's death had spread like wildfire, stirring a tempest of outrage and sorrow. Upon arrival, Sullivan was swiftly ushered into a secure briefing room where the air was thick with tension. Admiral Hawkins stood at the front, his face set in grim lines. Around the table were other high-ranking officers and strategists, all waiting for Sullivan. As the door sealed behind him, Hawkins nodded curtly. "Jack, we've got to act, and it's got to be now. The public is crying out for justice. The Council's indifference to our loss. It's the last straw." Sullivan took his seat, his mind racing with the implications of every potential decision. "What are our options, sir?" Hawkins turned to the holographic display in the center of the table. With a flick of his wrist, an array of massive starships appeared, rotating slowly in the dim light. "The leviathans," he announced, his voice resonant with a mixture of awe and determination. A murmur ran through the room. The leviathans were relics of a bygone era of warfare, monumental ships built during Earth's expansionist years, long before the establishment of the Galactic Council. Deactivated after the peace accords, they had remained dormant, hidden away in secret lunar bases. "Sir, the leviathans?" questioned General Martinez, a seasoned officer with a strategic mind. "They've been decommissioned for decades. Are they even operational?" Hawkins's eyes met Sullivan's. "That's where Jack comes in. He's the only one here who's commanded one during the skirmishes of the Orion Belt. Jack, I need you to get them battle-ready." Sullivan nodded, feeling the weight of history on his shoulders. "I'll need my best team on this. It's not just about powering them up. It's about making them effective with today's tech." "Exactly," Hawkins agreed. "And you'll have whatever resources you need. This is our top priority." As the meeting adjourned, Sullivan was approached by Dr. Lena Mitchell, head of the Advanced Weapons Research Division. "Jack, if we're going to do this, let's integrate some modern firepower and shielding. I have a few ideas that could make the Leviathans not just operational, but formidable." Sullivan appreciated her initiative. "Lena, assemble your team. I want updates round the clock. We're on a tight schedule." "Understood," she replied, her gaze as determined as his. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. Sullivan and Mitchell worked tirelessly, shuttling between Earth and the Moon, where the Leviathans loomed like giants frozen in time. Each ship was a marvel of engineering, their hulls bristling with dormant weapons and shield emitters. As they worked, Sullivan was joined by Captain Eric Zhao, an expert in ship restoration. Together, they tackled the colossal task of reviving the sleeping giants. "These ships were built to last, thank goodness," Zhao noted as they inspected the engine room of the flagship, the Sovereign. "But integrating the new tech is going to be like conducting surgery on a whale." Sullivan chuckled. "Let's just hope this whale wakes up ready to swim." Gradually, lights flickered on throughout the Sovereign, her systems humming to life after decades of silence. In the command center, screens lit up displaying star maps and weapon diagnostics, all updated with the latest software. Finally, as Earth's twin moons rose over the lunar horizon, the Sovereign's engines roared to life, the sound a deep, pulsing throb that resonated through the lunar base. Sullivan, standing in the control tower, watched as the other Leviathans followed suit, their lights piercing the lunar dusk. He turned to Mitchell and Zhao, who were beside him, watching the awakening of Earth's ancient protectors. "Well, the giants are awake. Let's see if the galaxy remembers why it used to fear them." With a fleet of Leviathans at his command, Sullivan knew that Earth was sending a clear message. The era of passive diplomacy was over, and humanity was ready to fight for its place in the galaxy. The mood at the lunar base was electric as the newly awakened Leviathans stood ready against the stark lunar landscape. Commander Jack Sullivan, alongside Dr. Lena Mitchell and Captain Eric Zhao, surveyed the fleet from the command center. These ancient ships, now melded with cutting-edge technology, gleamed under the cold light of Earth's satellite. "It's almost surreal," Zhao murmured, watching the crews perform final checks. "Seeing these behemoths ready to move, it's like waking up a sleeping army." Sullivan nodded, his eyes scanning the monitor screens. "Let's make sure this army knows exactly what to do. Prepare for final briefing." The command crew gathered, a mixture of seasoned officers and young tech specialists, all ready to follow Sullivan into what could escalate into a full-blown interstellar conflict. They assembled in the main briefing room, where Sullivan outlined the mission parameters. "Our objective is clear," Sullivan began, his voice resonant and steady. "We are to make a show of force to the Galactic Council. This is not just about retaliation, it's about asserting our place in the cosmos, showing that Earth cannot be disregarded. We will travel to verudex, where the incident occurred. Our presence there will be the first step in negotiating from a position of strength." Questions followed, ranging from engagement rules to logistics. Sullivan answered each with precision, leaving no room for doubt. "Engage only if engaged upon. Our aim is to display strength, not start a war." As the meeting concluded, the crews returned to their ships. Sullivan took a moment to communicate with Earth Command, updating Admiral Hawkins on their status. "Admiral, the fleet is ready. We depart within the hour." Hawkins's response was terse. "Understood, Commander. Remember, the eyes of the world are upon you. Godspeed." Sullivan ended the call and turned to Mitchell. "Make sure all systems are green. I want no surprises once we're out there." Mitchell nodded, her face set with determination. "You'll have the best tech support in the galaxy, Jack. We're ready." Under the cover of lunar night, the Leviathans began their departure. One by one, the massive ships powered up their engines, the ground trembling beneath them. The Sovereign led the way, its engines emitting a deep, pulsating rumble as it lifted off the lunar surface, The other ships followed, forming a formidable line as they ascended into the blackness of space. Inside the command bridge of the Sovereign, Sullivan watched as the moon receded behind them. The stars stretched out before them, a vast field of light against the eternal night. "Set course for verudex," he ordered, his voice echoing slightly in the hushed atmosphere of the bridge. The fleet made the jump to hyperspace, the stars turning to streaks as they entered the slipstream. The journey to verudex would take several hours, giving the crew some time to prepare for what awaited them. Sullivan used this time to walk through the ship, checking in with his officers and crew, ensuring everyone was as ready as they could be. In the ship's galley, he found a group of young crew members discussing the mission. Stopping to listen, he was struck by their resolve and the gravity with which they approached the task at hand. Returning to the bridge, Sullivan looked out at the shifting patterns of hyperspace. The ancient fleet, a relic of Earth's past, was now the spearhead of its future. As verudex approached, the weight of what they were about to undertake settled around him like a cloak. This mission would either forge a new path for humanity in the galaxy or ignite a conflict that could burn through the stars. Yet, as the leviathans surged forward, there was a sense of unity and purpose. Earth had reawakened its dormant giants, and they were ready to remind the galaxy of their might. The hyperspace journey ended as the leviathans emerged into real space, arrayed in formidable battle formation. The stark beauty of the verudex system unfolded before them, a swirling nebula casting a haunting glow over the barren planets circling a distant sun. Commander Jack Sullivan stood at the command deck of the Sovereign, watching the view screens intently. "Report," he commanded, his voice steady as he scanned the tactical displays. "We're at the edge of the verudex system, sir. No immediate signs of hostile activity, but sensors are picking up a patrol fleet from the Galactic Council not far from here," replied Lieutenant Carter, the ship's navigator. "Visual on screen," Sullivan ordered. The front display shifted, showing a small fleet of Council warships maneuvering within the sector. They were sleek and agile, in stark contrast to the bulkier, more menacing forms of the leviathans. "Communications, open a channel to the Council fleet," Sullivan directed. "Let's see if they're here to talk." Dr. Lena Mitchell, standing by Sullivan's side, observed quietly, "If they know what's good for them, they'll keep this peaceful." The communications officer nodded. "Channel open, sir." "This is Commander Jack Sullivan of the Earth Leviathan Fleet," Sullivan began, his voice broadcasting across space to the alien ships. "We are here on a peaceful mission in response to the incident at the Galactic Council Station. We request a parlay to discuss this matter civilly." There was a brief pause, the tension palpable on the bridge as they awaited a response. Finally, a voice crackled through the speakers, smooth and controlled. "This is Captain Therex of the Council Guard. We are aware of your fleet's reactivation, Commander Sullivan. We are prepared to escort you to verudex for discussions with the Council." "Understood, Captain Therex. We'll follow your lead," Sullivan responded, signaling to his navigator to adjust their course. As the leviathans adjusted their trajectory to follow the Council fleet, Captain Eric Zhao, who had been monitoring the tactical feeds, leaned in to whisper, "Something's off, Jack. Their weapons systems. They're charged. This might not be as friendly as it looks." Sullivan nodded without taking his eyes off the screen. "Keep shields at ready and inform all ships to stay alert. We won't start a conflict, but we'll be ready if one comes to us." The journey towards verudex was tense, with both fleets showing a cautious respect for each other's capabilities. As they approached the planet, however, alarms suddenly blared throughout the Sovereign. "Incoming fire! The Council fleet is engaging!" shouted Carter. "Shields up! Return fire, but keep it controlled. Target their weapon systems only." "We're not here to destroy them, just to make our point," Sullivan ordered, his voice calm but firm. The Leviathans responded with precision, their ancient cannons now enhanced with modern targeting systems, unleashing a barrage that disabled several Council ships' armaments without causing catastrophic damage. After a brief but intense exchange, the Council fleet pulled back, their message clear. "Ceasefire," Sullivan commanded. "Let them lick their wounds. We've shown we're not to be trifled with." Mitchell looked at Sullivan, her expression mixed with admiration and concern. "They tested us, Jack, and they learned we're not the decommissioned relics they thought we were." Sullivan gave a grim smile. "Let's hope that's the last test they need. Prepare the fleet to enter orbit around verudex. It's time to talk, and they know we're serious now." As the Leviathans moved into a defensive orbit around verudex, the crew prepared for what they hoped would be a diplomatic resolution. Sullivan knew that the events of today had changed the nature of their mission. No longer just a show of force, they were now fully engaged in a dance of diplomacy and power, where every move had to be calculated with precision. The leviathans, their hulls scarred from the brief skirmish, now orbited verudex in a silent, imposing formation. Below them, the planet's surface teemed with activity as the Galactic Council mobilized its forces in response to the unexpected demonstration of Earth's military might. Commander Jack Sullivan, aboard the Sovereign, watched the preparations with a calculated eye. "We're in position," Captain Eric Zhao reported, joining Sullivan on the command bridge. "The planet's defense systems are on high alert, but they haven't made any more moves against us." Sullivan nodded, his gaze fixed on the large tactical display. "It's time to send our demands. Lena, have you drafted the message?" Dr. Lena Mitchell handed him a datapad. "It's ready. We demand the Council acknowledge their role in the incident and open discussions for reparative actions. We also want a formal apology broadcast across all Council channels." "Good," Sullivan approved, handing the pad back to her. "Send it. Let's see how they respond to our terms." As Mitchell relayed the message to the Council, the tension on the bridge was palpable. This was a critical moment. Sullivan knew that their next steps would either pave the way for peace or plunge them deeper into conflict. Hours passed with no response from the planet. Sullivan paced the bridge, each step measured, each glance at the display screen marked with anticipation. Finally, the communications officer received a signal. "They're responding, sir," he announced, patching the transmission through. The screen flickered, and a Council representative appeared, his expression stern and unyielding. "Commander Sullivan, this is Ambassador Cyrex. Your demands are provocative. We invite you to discuss them in person, here on verudex." Sullivan exchanged a brief look with Zhao and Mitchell. "Tell the ambassador we accept his invitation. Prepare a shuttle. Captain Zhao, you're with me. Dr. Mitchell, you have the bridge." The preparations for the shuttle were swift. Zhao and Sullivan, along with a small security detail, descended to the planet, each aware of the potentially volatile situation awaiting them. Landing in the Council's headquarters, they were met with tight security and escorted into a stark meeting room where Ambassador Cyrex and several Council members waited. "Ambassador," Sullivan began, standing firm, "the death of a child on your station has ignited a firestorm on Earth. We seek justice and assurance that such tragedies will not recur. We are prepared to take whatever steps necessary to protect our citizens." Cyrex's reply was cool and calculated. "Commander, the Council regrets the unfortunate incident. However, your aggressive actions are disproportionate. We urge you to stand down your fleet and seek a diplomatic resolution." Zhao, observing the room's dynamics, leaned in to whisper to Sullivan. "They're stalling, Jack. They might be planning something." Sullivan kept his gaze fixed on Cyrex. "With respect, Ambassador, Earth will not stand down until our demands are met. This siege can end the moment you comply." The negotiations stretched into hours, with each side presenting and countering proposals. As Sullivan and Zhao navigated the diplomatic minefield, Mitchell, now acting commander, monitored the situation from orbit. Suddenly, an urgent message came through from one of the leviathans. "Dr. Mitchell, we're detecting a large military mobilization from the planet's surface. It looks like they're preparing to launch an offensive." Mitchell's response was immediate. "Alert Commander Sullivan. All ships, raise shields and prepare for potential combat." Back on the planet, Sullivan received the update mid-negotiation. His decision was swift. "Ambassador, our fleet is now on high alert. Any hostile action from your forces will be met with full retaliation." The threat of imminent conflict hung heavy in the room as both sides reached an impasse. Sullivan and Zhao, their every move now critical, stood ready to defend Earth's interests, knowing that the next few hours would determine the fate of their mission and possibly the future of interstellar relations between Earth and the Galactic Council. The tense standoff on verudex continued as both sides weighed their options. Commander Jack Sullivan and Captain Eric Zhao returned to the Sovereign to reassess their strategy following the inconclusive negotiations. The planet below bristled with military activity, a clear sign that the Galactic Council was preparing for all possibilities. On the bridge of the Sovereign, Dr. Lena Mitchell relayed the latest surveillance data. "The Council's forces are mobilizing more aggressively than we anticipated. It appears they're not only preparing defensive measures, but potentially gearing up for an offensive strike," she reported, her voice tinged with urgency. Sullivan surveyed the data, his mind racing. "We need a new approach. If we keep this up, we're going to slide from a show of force into full-scale war. Zhao nodded, his eyes on the tactical display. Maybe it's time for a more surgical approach. We could infiltrate their command center, disable their defense systems. It could give us the leverage we need without escalating to an all-out battle. Sullivan considered this, then made his decision. Prepare a team. I want our best on this. Zhao, you'll lead the operation. Lena, coordinate with the fleet to maintain our defensive posture. We can't afford any mistakes. As night fell over Verudex, Zhao and a select team of special operatives geared up for the mission. Using a stealth shuttle, they descended towards the planet, slipping through the Council's sensor nets under the cover of darkness. The team landed a few kilometers from the Council's military headquarters, a sprawling complex that controlled all planetary defenses. Moving quickly and silently, they infiltrated the perimeter, avoiding patrols and using cutting-edge tech to hack security systems. Inside the command center, Zhao directed his team to the main control hub. Martinez, you're on systems. I want those defenses down in minutes, he whispered, keeping an eye on the security feed. Specialist Martinez nodded, her fingers flying over the holographic interface as she bypassed layers of security. Almost there. Got it, she finally breathed, disabling the anti-air batteries and communication links. With the planet's defenses compromised, Zhao communicated their success to Sullivan. Command center's under our control. Defenses are offline. On the Sovereign, Sullivan responded immediately. Excellent work. Hold your position. We'll initiate the next phase from here. With the Council's military communications and defenses disrupted, Sullivan seized the opportunity to address the entire planet via the hacked systems. People of Verudex and representatives of the Galactic Council, this is Commander Jack Sullivan of the Earth Leviathan Fleet. We have demonstrated our capabilities and our resolve. It is not our wish to wage war, but to seek justice and ensure the safety of all humans. We urge the Council to reconsider their stance and meet our demands. As Sullivan's message broadcasted across every channel, the Council was forced into a position of vulnerability. The disruption of their defenses served as a clear demonstration that Earth could not only defend itself, but could also take decisive action if pushed. Back at the command center, Zhao and his team maintained control, ensuring no countermeasures could be reactivated. Meanwhile, the Council, now recognizing the futility of further resistance, convened an emergency session. Hours later, a new communication came through to the Sovereign. It was Ambassador Cyrex, his tone much changed. Commander Sullivan, we request a ceasefire and propose to open immediate peace talks. Your terms will be given full consideration. Sullivan, standing firm on the bridge, allowed himself a brief nod of satisfaction. Agreed, Ambassador. Let's meet and conclude this conflict. As preparations for the peace talks began, Sullivan and his crew knew that they had reached a critical turning point. The balance of power had shifted, and for the first time, the Council was ready to negotiate on Earth's terms. The prospect of peace now seemed within reach, but Sullivan remained cautious, aware that the delicate process of diplomacy was just beginning. The dawn on Verudex was marked not by the rise of the sun, but by the illumination of peace talks between the Earth Leviathan Fleet and the Galactic Council. The mood was cautiously optimistic as both sides gathered in a large, austere hall designed for such significant diplomatic encounters. Commander Jack Sullivan, accompanied by Captain Eric Zhao and Dr. Lena Mitchell, represented Earth with a solemn dignity. Ambassador Cyrex and his team were the first to arrive at the negotiation table, their expressions somber, reflecting the gravity of their situation. The once defiant Council now recognized the tactical disadvantage imposed by Earth's decisive actions. As we begin, Cyrex stated, clearing his throat, let it be known that the Council acknowledges the unfortunate events that led to this juncture. We are prepared to discuss reparations and the terms of peace in earnest. Sullivan nodded, his face impassive, yet his eyes revealing a glimmer of victory. Thank you, Ambassador. Let's proceed with the terms. First, we demand formal recognition of Earth's sovereignty and a restructured role in the Galactic Council that reflects our position and contributions. Cyrex consulted with his advisors briefly before responding. The Council agrees to these terms. We are prepared to officially recognize Earth's sovereignty and expand your influence within the Council. Additionally, we will establish a memorial and a restitution fund for the victim's family and other humans affected by the incident. Zhao, who had been closely monitoring the Council's demeanor, leaned in to whisper to Sullivan, "They're bending more than expected. We might push for more security guarantees." Sullivan considered this, then addressed the Council. Furthermore, Earth must be included in the security framework of the Council. We require a guarantee that human territories will be protected against all threats, internal and external. Sarex paused, his face tightening slightly. That is a substantial request, Commander. But given the circumstances, the Council is prepared to integrate Earth into our security protocols. Mitchell, observing the proceedings, noted everything on her datapad, aware that these agreements would shape future interstellar relations. She whispered to Sullivan, "We should also propose joint patrols to monitor trade routes in critical junctions. It's a strategic move to deter future conflicts." Sullivan nodded and relayed the suggestion. In addition to previous terms, Earth proposes joint patrols with Council forces to safeguard critical interstellar trade routes. This will demonstrate our mutual commitment to stability and peace. After a moment of hushed conversation among themselves, the Council members nodded in agreement. "We accept this proposal. It will be implemented immediately following the ratification of this treaty." The negotiations continued, with each side meticulously outlining the details of the agreement. Terms were debated, concessions were made, and after several hours of intense discussion, a comprehensive treaty was drafted. As the final document was signed, Sullivan felt a profound sense of accomplishment and relief. He addressed the Assembly one last time. This treaty is not just the end of a conflict. It is the beginning of a new era of cooperation and peace. Let us move forward with mutual respect and shared purpose. The Council members, including Cyrex, stood and extended their hands. "Commander Sullivan, today you have shown us the strength and resolve of Earth. We welcome this new chapter with your planet." With the treaty concluded, Sullivan, Zhao, and Mitchell prepared to return to the Sovereign. As they walked back to their shuttle, Sullivan felt the weight of history on his shoulders. Not just for resolving a critical conflict, but for setting a new course for humanity's role in the galaxy. The return journey to Earth was filled with debriefings and preparations for the announcement of the peace treaty. Sullivan knew the galaxy was watching, and Earth had emerged not just as a survivor, but as a formidable power in its own right. The long journey home was not just a return, but a triumphant procession celebrating a new dawn for human interstellar relations. As the leviathans approached Earth, the mood among the crew was one of quiet triumph and relief. Commander Jack Sullivan stood at the command deck of the Sovereign, watching Earth grow larger on the view screen. The blue and green of the planet was a welcome sight after the tension-filled days around verudex. "Home looks good," Captain Eric Zhao remarked, coming up beside Sullivan. "It does," Sullivan agreed, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "It'll look even better once we land and can finally relax." Dr. Lena Mitchell joined them, her eyes reflecting the fatigue of the past weeks. "I can't wait to step on solid ground again, but I think I'll miss the stars." Sullivan nodded. "The stars aren't going anywhere, Lena, and neither are we. After this, I think Earth will be taking a more active role out there." The arrival was met with much fanfare. News of the treaty and the successful display of Earth's forgotten power had spread quickly. As the Leviathans descended from orbit, they were greeted by cheering crowds and a flotilla of media ships broadcasting live across the globe. Once docked, Sullivan, Zhao, and Mitchell disembarked to a hero's welcome. They were ushered immediately to a grand assembly where world leaders, military brass, and the press awaited them. Sullivan was invited to speak, an honor he accepted with a sense of duty. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, addressing the assembled crowd and countless others watching around the world. "We set out to protect Earth's interests and seek justice for a grave wrong. What we achieved goes beyond that. We've secured a promise for a safer future for all humanity and forged a new path for Earth among the stars." The speech was met with applause, a resounding endorsement of the crew's courage and Sullivan's leadership. After the formalities, the crew of the Leviathans were given time to reconnect with families and friends, their stories of the mission shared in hushed tones filled with awe and pride. Behind the celebrations, however, there was much work to be done. Sullivan spent the following weeks in briefings and strategy sessions, helping to shape Earth's new role in galactic affairs, as outlined by the treaty. The Leviathans, too, would not return to mothballs. Instead, they were to be modernized further, serving as both a deterrent and a symbol of Earth's renewed commitment to defend its sovereignty and participate in galactic diplomacy. One evening, as Sullivan looked out over the city from his apartment, the weight of their achievements truly hit him. They had altered the course of history, not just for Earth, but for the Galactic Council and its many member species. His communicator buzzed with a message from Zhao. "Drinks at O'Malley's? Time to really celebrate coming home." Sullivan smiled, typing back a quick reply. "On my way. Wouldn't miss it for the world." As he left his apartment, Sullivan felt a renewed connection to Earth and its people. They had shown the galaxy their strength, but more importantly, they had upheld their principles of justice and peace. Looking up at the stars, he knew this was just the beginning. Earth was ready to take its place in the vast unfolding saga of the cosmos, its ancient fleet a reminder of their readiness to face whatever challenges lay ahead.